Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. This time around, we're doing episode number 22, and we'll get this out of the way quickly for all of you audio listeners. Today on the show, we're going to be looking at all the bits and pieces that have happened with the recent updates. Obviously, we've had the Blast tournament that's just gone down, a bit of controversy or controversy, depends on where you're from and what you want to say. We got the world rankings. We need to dive into that a little bit. RMR second event is CS Summit has kicked off today as well. And of course, we have Device with us. But before we can get to talking to Device, I got to introduce you to our panel. Prof, I don't have any fun questions for you today. Do you have anything profound you'd like to say?
Not really. Probably like avoid looking at screens for like 20 hours out a day because your eyes get tired. That's what I found out like being 30. That's my knowledge I can share right now.
That's a pretty good tip. Strike, you got any tips?
Don't let things fall on your knee, because like my roll up, literally when I was setting up, it fell on my knee and it's pretty fucking heavy, so it kind of hurts right now. So don't do that, please.
Okay, this is good general
a
life
lot
advice.
of health tips right here.
This is great. And of course, Device, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to this show. Yeah, all good.
All right, well, we're going to kick it straight off. We're going to get into the hot seat. Lucas, roll it. All right, so we're jumping into the hot seat. That's where we put our guest. This time around, it's Device. Thank you very much for being with us. Now, I want to get this out of the way very, very early in this conversation. I've started to do this thing now where I'm looking at the camera because of Blast. Normally, I just look around and whatever, but this is a serious thing. So I want to get this out of the way very, very quickly. Now, the people at home, our viewers, everybody who's going to watch this, they're all probably well aware of some of the reports that have come on out, the back and forth that's been over there on social media, and obviously the burnout. You've had players who have taken some time off, other players who've come on in. Now, a lot of that, right, the people at home are probably going to be sitting there thinking Device is going to come on and give us some PR answers. Device is going to come on and he's not going to be able to say a lot. Now, you're obviously contractually obliged to say where you can't say certain things, and I think people at home need to be able to understand that. But one of the things which I think is important here is, Device, a lot of people at home are merely concerned for you guys in the team because kind of how things have fallen apart in recent times with people needing to take a break. That's alarming to your fans. So I want to kind of give you the floor right here to say whatever the hell you feel before we jump into questions.
Sure, thank you. I think you went around everything that's been spoken about us, as you said. I think most importantly, I think that the fans should know that the team is not very frustrated or alarmed. Of course, it's been a tough situation, a tough month for us playing with 2 substitutes. So all in all, we're just hoping for the best for the health of Lucas and Andreas. And right now, the media picture is being painted a lot worse than it really is within the team, I would say. And then specifically, there's been a lot of like things that are not really true about the training schedule we have, and sort of like there's a lot of stuff that has just been said. I don't know really why. It's probably from some other contract within the Astralis group. But yeah, all in all, we're just looking forward to get the squad back together. And right now we're actually going on a pretty prolonged vacation, so everyone can like relax and get back the motivation if you had problems with that, or in general just get ready for the next season.
Okay, so I'm sure some of the things that you touched on there, Striker and Prof might have more questions as we get stuck into this conversation right now. But I think we may as well set the scene, right? Because 2020 hasn't really gone the way that any of us were expecting so far. There's obviously been the pandemic, and now there's, tensions that seem like they're very high around the world because we can't do our normal bits and pieces. So for Astralis, at least heading into 2020, before things fell apart, was everything feeling pretty good in the camp? Everything was going in the right direction? Everyone was happy and content to have another fantastic year?
We kind of knew that Lucas needed a break for a long time. gla1ve, needed a break for a long time. It was just more or less about timing it correctly and trying to help him cope with the stress that's related to the game, and trying to find a solution where he could actually continue playing. But in the end, we knew he was gonna need a break. It's been something that's been going on for a while, so that's always has been in the back head for a long time, even when we were winning majors and tournaments. So it was really a concern. I think that when we started the year, a lot of our principles regarding how We want to do things together, eat breakfast together, be a team 24 hours of the day when we are traveling. We didn't really do that going into Blast, and I think that the biggest disappointment for me personally this year has probably been losing against Navi at Katowice. But all in all, going into the year, we were feeling really confident, and I also have to say that we kind of ended the season before the vacation pretty well with the 5-man lineup that everyone knows as Astralis. We won the Road to Rio pretty convincingly, in my opinion. And yeah, we knew gla1ve had to go on a break after that, but yeah, we kind of ended, as I would say, with the regular lineup on a good note, and that's something I keep remembering when I think times get tough.
When you say, you were talking about timing it correctly, right? Knowing about gla1ve leaving for a while and then trying to find the right timing. Do you mean in terms of tournament obligations, or in terms of having somebody actually step in instead of him, as we saw with the additions?
Yeah, I mean, both are heavy factors, because we wanted him to play the major and then probably go on the break after that, right? But everything just got so weird suddenly, and as you said, the pandemic kind of moved everything around, so we had to find a path on how we would do it within the circumstances we have. So as everyone knows, we signed Patrick as a tech, who's starting in 9-10 days, which is pretty exciting for us, our 6-man. Then we signed JUGi later on, and we needed a substitute, and a 6-man lineup, 7-man lineup is something that we're gonna experience with, getting some experience with. So yeah, we tried to time it, and we knew that if we win the Road to Rio qualifier and we don't play the next Road to Rio qualifier, then we're pretty much secured a place in the next tournament if we come with the same 5 people.
I want to ask about you mentioned you knew that gla1ve needed to take a break even before 2020. So for viewers at home, what is the reason? How do you know that someone needs to take a break, and what are the things that kind of put you into a position that you have to take a break from CS, especially from Astralis, winning all the time? It's not like you're struggling and everything. I mean, it is hard, but the results are good, right? So it should be keeping you motivated and all of that. So
I think results-wise, it's everyone thinks that because you are winning, things are easy. I think actually when you are the best team in the world, things get harder, because everyone are constantly one step ahead of you because they know every move you make. So you always have to be adaptive and innovative, but not ruin your game plan and ruin your game style. It's a fine balance that's really hard for especially Sonic and gla1ve, who are working on that constantly. gla1ve has been also calling, and there's a bigger responsibility in regarding to when you have to take a break. I think it's just listening to yourself. I think there are a lot of people out there that probably need a break, that are just afraid of losing their spot, because how the environment is if you say I need a break, they will just have to sign another player. There's no guarantee you get back, and that's also a stress adding on to the pressure that's always been there for us CS players. So for him it was mostly prolonged burnout, he was stressed constantly, whereas when I had to take my break, it was more or less health issues that were kind of urgent and needed to be taken care of. So for him it was stress that has just been building up over a long time, and even the player breaks we've had haven't been enough for him to cope with it and really get to the bottom of why it happens and how he can deal with it. So that's basically why now.
I'm just so curious, because how familiar was the team with what the calendar of 2020 was going to look like, right? Because obviously I would receive a pretty similar calendar to what you guys would be attending, the guys from HLTV.org as well. And from you guys are one of the teams who started skipping events first, right? But from the way that I looked at the calendar for this year, and I obviously, it's been a long time since I played, but the amount of events, it felt like a manageable amount, right? Especially for tier 1 teams who had already been qualified for majors, didn't have to worry about the minors, didn't have to go through any of the qualifiers for the bigger tournaments, because you already get invitations. Did you feel coming into the year that the calendar for 2020 was starting to lighten up a little bit?
at least the first part of the year. I always think the first part of the year is actually pretty easy because people have to sign their sponsor deals and they can't plan their events like that early. You never really see events early January, stuff like that, right? So the first part of the year is always kind of easy. Second part of the year is always really stressful. So we knew that it was gonna be quite okay, but everything just changed, right? The start of the year didn't seem like it was that big of an issue, but yeah, I think actually it's been more stressful playing from home. I can say that from my own experience because there are a lot of responsibilities at home that you don't have when you are living at a hotel. And there's basically you work so much more, right? You see Complexity are playing a game right now. They just won yesterday. That has happened before when you are playing LAN tournaments as well. But I just think that online, it's really hard to set yourself up for a game in the same way as when you are playing in an arena.
Okay.
I think just something to add before you go on to like, while we're still at the start of 2020, obviously the report that Richard Lewis did about your team and a lot of things, kind of encapsulating some smaller reports that happened before and stuff like that, kind of piecing it all together. One of the things that was mentioned there that even like starting 2020 and after the early tournaments, that the team, not just gla1ve, but like the whole team felt kind of burnt out, kind of maybe overplayed. And then going back to the end of the 2019 when you played, I think 4 events in 40 days and on 3 different or 4 different continents, literally flying around. So was that the thing? Like, did you feel going into 2020 that you actually had enough of rest to start the season normally?
I think I actually said it previous. I don't think there was discussed that we needed to have a prolonged break as a team, but from my experience I can say, like, afterhand, I feel like everyone in the team knows that we didn't have the same energy and not motivation, but I don't know how to say, like, work ethic going into some of the first events, Blast especially in London when we lost. We knew something was off because we weren't there 100%, and it's hard to say if it was burnout or not. I think that I can say that I was looking forward to playing, but if that flow is not there within the team and how you're working with the maps and the map pool, then it's just hard to get into that rhythm, and you kind of need some losses to get smacked back to reality, right? There was never really discussed any prolonged break or anything, and I think as Chad also said, like, going into the year it didn't look that hard for most teams, and we feel like we planned really well, and we always try to plan really well when the season's starting with which tournaments and where we want to go. But yeah, this time it's just been really hard, and that's also one of the things why we see Xyp9x is out now, because it's actually been really stressful for us playing from home.
Okay. So we may as well keep this going because we can always come back with some more of these questions around the reports and stuff that are out there. But we may as well dig into the Esatag signing, right? Do you want to kind of shed a little bit of light on why Esatag out of all the names?
He was the first guy that we signed, and I have never played with him, but I've heard really like good stuff about him. He's a really versatile player. He can basically AWP, he can basically lurk, he can play map control. He was never gonna in-game lead, even though he was gonna replace gla1ve for the first part of his playing, whatever you call it, right? So we had Major who was gonna call, so we knew that no matter who he was actually going to take the spot of, he was a player that could actually play those roles at a high level. I also think that he's had pretty bad roles in Heroic and still performing great. There's just something you can see in some players that make the players around him better, and he's one of those players where you can see he actually makes the players he play with better, in my opinion.
I'm just curious, while we're on the subject of Magic in the game leading, why him? Why was it so obvious that it was going to be him taking over?
I mean, like, he is really vocal on the T side, has always been really vocal on the T side, and I think that just personality-wise, he's probably the best, the most leader-ish type we have. I think that everyone in the team has kind of come together when Magic was calling, especially when gla1ve was there as well. They were like a really good duo. Like, Magic was doing most of the calls, but then gla1ve always had an idea, always knew what would be a good solution if we were kind of running dry on tactics, right? So I think that duo was really good, and I think he did amazingly. Even though we lost a lot of games with Snappi and JUGi, he did amazingly as a caller. I just think it fits him. It's hard to say why, because he's not the normal leader type person you would see, and he's never been in that role before, but it just fit him perfectly. And I think that me, Xyp, and dupreeh, we would not be good leaders. I do a lot of the calling on CT regards to where I want to play and how we should play around the AWP, but the T side, I just try to fill the role and try to set up some of my teammates if I don't have a read.
All right, I have one here that this one here is a weird one, right? Because we've talked about this quite a bit on the show. We did like a game changer episode. These topics seem to crop up every now and again. But how do you, like, obviously you're talking a lot from a burnout perspective, and that a sixth man is necessary to kind of help mitigate that. But in terms of your first thought, right? As if someone goes to you, hey, Device, there's this beautiful game called Counter-Strike, and we've always had 5 players. How about we throw a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 man in there? You know, like we have 2 in-game leaders and 2 AWP. How did you like initially feel about that? Were you like pushing back a little bit?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can say that I come from traditional sports. I played badminton, and I understand the thesis behind like going to a football team and saying you have 11 players, right? It's silly because they can get injured physically. They are in a higher risk of injury than we are, and yeah, I think that the dynamic of 5 players will always be stronger than having 6, 7, 8 players. But I think there is a desperate need from some of the players to actually be allowed to have these breaks, and not only in the player breaks when they know it's set in stone, right? Because it actually hurts the organization. It hurts the 4 other players if a player is not there. And if you just bench the guy and nobody wants him because he is burned out, you can't sell him. It's just a huge liability to the team. You have to buy a new player, which costs a lot of money. So I think there's a lot of financial aspects where it can help, but also a lot for the well-being of a person. If I know like my stomach is just messing me up, like the last 2 months, I just have to finish 4 more months and then I can go on a vacation. Like I'm not gonna be 100% at the level I could be at. So I think that we have to be realistic in the way we pressure some of our players. We've seen players go down like flies in the last few months, right? So I think there is a desperate need of this. I just don't know how it's gonna work out. Honestly, I don't know. Nobody knows, but I think that you just have to try some stuff out, and maybe it's not the right way to go. Maybe we just have to play less tournaments, but you don't know before you have really tested out anything.
Okay. Prof, you got anything you want to jump in with here?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the SETAG signing, and then that was obviously like kind of a big bomb in the CS community, like, oh, the best team in the world, they're signing a 6th player, they're trying something new, even though Ago did it before you, but it doesn't matter. Obviously, when Astralis does it, it kind of has a bit more leverage, it has a bit more value. But yeah, then Zonic said that the plan is to have 6 players, have SETAG as a part of the team on equal rights with everyone else. Maybe he's not going to play the same amount of matches, but he's going to be like as on the same level as the other players. And he also mentioned that the plan is not to have like 7, 8, 9 players. And then maybe like 2 weeks later, we had the news about potentially being like 7, 8, 9, or ideally even being 10 players by Casper Reedtz, right? Your sports director. So what happened there? Was there like kind of a back and forth on the idea of what you want to have? Was there? It seems like there was a clash in some way about the idea of how the team should be moving forward.
Yeah, that's completely understandable, and it's a little bit confusing. I think that nobody knew that Xyp9x was gonna need a break, and we kind of expected we could have gotten SETAG a bit earlier, since his contract was going out now in July. So we had an issue where we were in the need of 2 players, and we had to play tournaments. We have tournament obligations. So I think that there was a desperate need for another player, and I think that in under the circumstances, it was kind of natural to get a 7th player. But honestly, I don't know how it's going to work out. I can't really sit and defend it that much. As you said, there was like, it was not completely planned. So that's basically what I can say about that. I think it, as I said before, it's going to be hard to see how it works out as well, because if a player sits too long on the bench, how are you going to know if he has the level? And if you have the 5 players ready, aren't you just gonna play with the 5 best players if everyone wants to play? There's always ideal situations where there are a lot of negative parts about having more players, but there are also some situations where I think it's going to be necessary. As I said, I don't really know how it's going to work out, so it's going to be a test period for sure.
Okay.
There was actually a point where it was reported. I think it was DK. I don't want to say that for sure, but I think it was DK who said that even you were at a point where you were going to take a break. Was that ever an option, or?
I think the only real time I needed a break after the first one I had was actually basically when I started again. We started winning after we won a tournament in Dallas. We were going to Sydney, or either it was Sydney to Dallas, something like that. And when we were in Sydney, the second time I was in Sydney, it was just chaos for me. Like my body reacts so bad to like flying that way, and then we had to go to the US afterwards. And I was speaking with the team and with the organization, and basically I was just gonna go to Dallas. I was gonna bring my girlfriend, see how it goes. Maybe there's a little bit of like home feeling and a safety net, so to say, right? Because I've just been in all alone in Sydney without any. Like it always makes it easier sometimes to have your girlfriend on tour. So that's basically the solution we had at that point, and then it kind of went. It went okay. Honestly,
That's
it just got better.
Yeah, look, I'm very look when I see players who are playing a tournament, and I'll keep their names out of it, and then they I've seen it before, Device, where players have started a tournament without their girlfriend there, then they've qualified for the playoffs, and then they brought their girlfriend for the playoffs, which is the most important part of the tournament.
Then
and
they choke, right?
But I sit there and I think to myself, like, are they trying to win or are they trying to have sex? Like, I get it, you know.
Honestly, I don't think you bring your girlfriend for the sex. I just think some experiences are really cool to actually share with your partner. I think in Astralis we actually try to, when we bring a girlfriend, we don't bring one girlfriend. We try to bring, everyone brings their partners, and they kind of have a vacation, you know, together, so to say. And then you share, if you win, you share some of the good moments of that. So I can understand where you're coming from, and I've seen exactly what could happen is that one player is not singing in practice room. He's not preparing for the game. He's not there for the game mentally. But I think there's a good balance of this, and we've been through that thing way back in the TSM days and stuff like that, where it was just horrible. So we've had like pretty strict rules, and it's worked out for us. We've won tournaments with every major with girlfriends. So
I feel like it's so Astralis, man. To like, if one girlfriend comes, every girlfriend has to come.
I think that makes sense, honestly.
Yeah, sure, I get it.
Otherwise, it's just like
100%
jealousy between the girlfriends and all of that. It's not good.
Well, it's like when cricket. Like, you guys probably don't know cricket, but cricket's obviously a very big sport in Australia, right? And then when they go on tour, they're on the road for quite a long period of time, and the same thing happens. Like, they all have wives and girlfriends, and they're called WAGs, right? That's what they're labeled in the Australian news, which is wives and girlfriends, and they do exactly that. They all go out together while the players are practicing and doing what they're needing to do, and then when they do have downtime, which we all know everybody needs, well, then they can use that time together. So the way that you're talking about it sounds very responsible. The way that I've seen it by a lot of these pros is not that way. They're spending the majority of their time.
For sure.
And so, look, that's obviously not related to you guys, so we'll stay away from that. I can really go off on tangents here. Now, we'll keep this one going. We'll keep this one moving. We've already kind of touched on the gla1ve and Xyp9x situation. The Xyp9x one, from what it sounds like, it sounds like, I don't want to step over any boundaries here, but it sounds like he hit a point, something changed, and he had to walk away.
For sure, it was a lot of personal reasons we don't have to speak too much about, and that it wasn't a planned break, for sure. That's no secret.
Okay, so that one's easy. We can cover that one. We can respect the boundaries right there. We can start talking about not having to, but getting to play with JUGi and Snappi, right? And I think we did like an interview during Pro League, or maybe it was with the Road to Rio or whatever. And we asked you, like, about if you would be like mentoring for JUGi, right? You would kind of be like showing him the kind of your approach to the game and that kind of stuff. And you said that may have been the plan, but that's not the plan anymore. So do you want to talk to at least your understanding of having these two, Esatag and JUGi coming in, and the way that it was explained to you that they would be integrated, and how it felt playing with Snappi and JUGi when you played in DreamHack and Blast and stuff?
Oh yeah, sure. Integration wise, everyone, like, it happened really quickly. It was kind of a team decision to get a sixth man. That was something we've spoken about for a long time, but a seventh man was, as I said, a sudden occurrence of like need. We needed to have a player, right? Other than that, I think that, as you said, like mentoring JUGi, we had a little bit of a dilemma within the team where it was like, is he gonna play the AWP? Because I feel like I play a really good rifle, but the thing is, when we have to switch and switch back and switch around, I'm in a really good state with my mental health and with my health, so I know that hopefully I'm not gonna go on a break. So like, I would like to keep playing the AWP role, to not like move around in roles, and we actually had to put JUGi in a role he's never played before, which kind of, I think, made him a little bit uncomfortable. But playing with those two guys, it was not the easiest time we've had. I think that everyone can probably, like, we should have won against NIP. We threw that game. We had a lot of games we could have won. But it was a learning experience. I think especially Magis got a lot of good experience from playing with Snappi and his way of leading a team, and he has good communication. He's just in general a really good player, and I think JUGi was kind of misplaced role wise, and I think that also shows a little bit on the performance. So I think you have to give him a little bit of slack for that, because it's always really hard to be like, you're joining Astralis as a stand-in. There's a lot of pressure. We're the best. We just won a tournament. I think we were still ranked #1 at that point, and he has to play a role he's never played before. There's a big pressure on him to kind of perform. So yeah, I think that, of course, we're not like, we could have done so much better if we had more time, if we had more time to mix the puzzles a little bit. So in general, like, it's been a good month. We like, experience wise, but of course result wise we're not happy, and we're also going on a break. Like, we skipped Summit because we knew we want to play with the core lineup if it's possible, and there's no reason to just swap points back and forth, and we knew that like we would probably lose points if we played the Summit Road to Rio qualifier.
Did you make the calculations? Would you have to do like a really good result to even make any ground?
Yeah, because we had to change 2 players, so I think that we needed to be top 5 if I remember correctly. Okay, there's even a match between top 5 and 6 I think so. So top 5, I think then we would probably have gained 100 points, right? And that's been, with the stress building on top of that as well, it was just not worth it.
Sure, makes no sense.
And obviously the risk, because you never know if you're gonna place there or not. So you might just like play for another week and lose 200, 300 points.
Like, we would have lost a lot of points, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, just adding on to that, obviously, I think it was after Summit when you made a tweet, something about the expectations about Astralis, and then Thorin added on to that saying something like that you're trying to imply that people shouldn't criticize you, that you shouldn't be criticized at all. So tell me a bit about, like, at that point, the community pressure and everything that kind of built up together. How are you feeling? What was your kind of feeling right then?
Honestly, I was just trying to, as I said with JUGi and Snappi, trying to cut them some slack, because people were really hard on them. Everyone was blaming them where they are just being put in an unfair situation. I don't think that it's at all we have this barrier of not being criticized, and we've always been criticized ever since this core like started playing together. We've always had different issues revolving around us, right? So I never really think that we've been in some sort of like crybabies. I just we still had a match, so I wanted to kind of protect the 2 new guys in some way, trying to maybe not get people to bash them so hard because they are in a tough situation. And I think that you can understand it and compare, like, I don't know how to say it, like, comprehend it in different ways, right? You can read it in different ways, and I understand that maybe people have read it like saying that we are immune to your criticism because of blah blah blah. But of course, we deserve criticism when we don't do well. But you just have to always take the circumstances into the matter as well. Like, so that's just my opinion.
Okay. Now, look, I'm not a huge fan of all the drama and the finger pointing and all that kind of stuff. But like I prefaced at the start of the conversation, obviously a lot of the concern from the community comes for concern for you guys and your health and all that. And everything that you've outlined here, it sounds like decisions that have been made to benefit your health. So the thing that you were talking about regarding the amount of practice hours, can I know you can't obviously go into too much about what's in your contract, but you made a comment there potentially about it being from another contract from an Astralis group. Can you shed any more light on what you mean there, just for clarity for everybody?
Yeah, I mean that I can't remember how many hours it says, but specifically in the Richard Lewis article, it says that we have a specific amount of time we have to practice.
It's 37 to 84 hours a week.
But there's not really like I can guarantee you that there's nothing like that in our contract. We actually have a pretty like I would say good flow with Danny, where he's just like kind of speaking with everyone. What do we need? How much do we need these days? I think that of course there are some physical trainings that are not like they're not mandatory, but they are recommended. I think that some of us are using that, so maybe we actually go close to, I don't even know, maybe 30 hours, I would say, something like that. And then, of course, when we are traveling at tournaments, the schedule is pretty rough, but that's something we have chosen ourselves. We are a team that like to prepare really well. So the contract, it must be an earlier Astralis contract, maybe, or a contract from some of the other guys. That's one thing, that's for sure.
Okay, and I got one more controversial one here, mate.
Sure.
Then I'll let Striker and Prof do their last bits, and we'll move on. We'll get to some fun stuff, I promise. So from you guys, now you were just basically saying that you were not trying to protect, but let people know that, you know, Snappi and JUGi being there, this is obviously a hard circumstance. But there was some comments or stuff flying around that the organization was upset that you guys as individuals were trying to temper the community's expectations of you, right? Like, is there
I don't even Astralis organization, or
the Astralis? I don't even know how to word this correctly, because it's such it seems
well,
like such an
it was
absurd
insinuated
claim.
basically that the Astralis that the organization didn't really like your comments about the expectations and stuff. I think that was the insinuation.
I really hadn't heard about that, but
I think if I can expand on this a bit,
yeah,
how it kind of makes sense, how it kind of fits into what maybe the report was and what other people have been saying about Astralis is, especially when Astralis went public as an like on the stock market in Denmark as an IPO, did an IPO, that then obviously from that point onwards you're more susceptible to not community, but like what people think about you, how the news are shaped,
public
right?
perception.
The perception of everything. And that's why, let's say, JUGi wasn't announced as a stand-in, but as a 7th player, because that's like a positive spin on it. And I guess similar thing was that with the tweet where maybe you guys say, okay, don't expect much from us, but from maybe the organizational point of view, they want people to expect a lot of you from you, because like you're the #1 team in the world and all of that. So you have to live up to the expectation that has been built with everything in the past.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. It makes a lot of sense, but I haven't really heard anything from the organization itself. So I don't really know. But we don't really think so much about the business side within the team. I don't really think about Astralis being an IPO and like there's a lot about stock prices and stuff like that. We just, in that circumstance or in that this specific instance, it was, as I said, actually for myself only just to try to protect those two guys a little bit. I know because we've been through a lot of things, the previous guys with community hate and so on, and it can affect you a lot and it can put a lot of pressure on you. So if you are not prepared well enough for that, I think that you have to try to protect your teammates as much as possible.
Okay, so Striker and Prof, do you have anything else you want to ask Device before we move into the recent news?
I just wanted to then, just to finish this off, because you mentioned before about like multiple players changing rules. You mentioned Zonic as well, having like doing the schedule for you guys. Has anything changed in the last like 6 months or so about who is in control of the roster? How do you really talk about these things? Who's gonna make the call to like say, okay, gla1ve is back, Xyp9x is on the bench, or Magix is on the bench, or like stuff like that? How is that gonna work?
As far as I recall correctly, I think contractually it's everything is Sonic, and I think it's also that's just how it's gonna work. But he is very much integrated within the team, and I think he always wants to play with the best team available. And I think he commented on this earlier, as you also said that people might not play that many games if the 5-man roster that has won 3 majors in a row are ready to play. They'll probably play. That's just how it is. That's also how I want it to be, if I have to be completely honest. So I feel like we have some right to protect some of the trophies we've won and try to, in some way, if you can actually maybe look at it as Chicago Bulls, we really want not to just lose our era on stuff that is not sports related, right? So I think if everyone is fit to fight, I think Danny is just gonna pick the strongest team, and we've showcased multiple times how we can, as a 5-man, be the strongest team. And maybe if it could be so that one of the other guys actually is better, but then it will also show on the results, and the fans will be happy anyways, right?
Sure. Okay. Striker, you got anything just here? You all good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, it got a little bit somber there towards the end, but we're going to get into, I don't know if they're going to be more fun topics, but I'm definitely going to get angry about some stuff. So let's get into the recent news. Lucas, play the bumper. We're back? Oh, we're back. All right. So I'm lagging a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, so I apologize for my video, for my audio, for those bits and pieces. I live on an island in the middle of nowhere. The internet is not my best friend. I'll try and get it fixed. I'll get the whole house rewired. I'll do what I can. But we're jumping into the recent news. And look, there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. There's a lot of bits and pieces to dive into. And my favorite thing that has happened in recent times is the bloody Dust 2 doors being turned around. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen it at home, people listening over the audio. Maybe you just watch professional Counter-Strike. We haven't had it play out in any tournaments just yet. Now, Striker or Prof, do you know if they're using the new version today in the RMR events?
I have no idea.
Actually, I'm not sure. That's a good question, to be honest.
Someone in chat will know.
I'm pretty sure they have to. I'm pretty sure they have to. It's a major stuff, so I'm pretty sure they need to play the new one.
Okay. Well,
because we've never, as far as I know, we've never had like major events being, having a different rule set than the exactly the rollback versions.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure they're playing on the new one, but I actually don't know if Dust 2 has been played yet.
I think you probably bang on. I'm trying to have a look right now. I'm just having a look through some of these games.
In the chat says new version.
Okay.
So I'll trust that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
If Complexity versus Big goes to a third map, they will be playing Dust 2. Just for those of you who maybe have multiple streams on, and you can see how it's hopefully, yeah, because fuck, poor Complexity. But regardless of that, those changes have come through with a big change as well, the visibility change. Now, there was obviously some bugs with it in the early stages. You may have seen that getting highlighted on Reddit. Someone could see through some certain bits and pieces on Nuke. But these changes as a whole, I don't know how much Counter-Strike everybody's had a chance to dive on into. It only feels like positive changes to me. Like the Dust 2 one, Dust 2 was obviously having a lot of issues with that B-bomb site, right? People have heard us for fucking months now just sitting here talking about how difficult it is to retake that site and how hard it is on that map because you have to gamble stack, you do 4 guys long, or you can do a 3-man B stack in case of a mid to B. All those bits and pieces, right? Now, we'll start with you, Device, because you said before we kick this off, you're obviously taking a bit of a hiatus. You're on break, but did you keep up with these changes?
I played a few FPL games on Dust 2, but I can't really, there's not that much strategy depth going into it. But looking in general at the map, I think that Dust 2 has always been pretty weird with the T spawning so close to long. It kind of creates it kind of becomes the long to sometimes. Like if the T's have spawned for long every game, sometimes they have like 10 spawns for long, then it's all they do, right? And I think that this allows you to stack more long and, as you said, play more retake B, which is something that, if I remember correctly, there was like under 10% retake rate on the B bomb side, like something stupid like this. It's literally impossible to retake it, right? Especially if you get the bomb side early round. So I don't really know how the CTs will retake if they lose the bomb side early, because then the Ts are just gonna keep smoking the door like they've always done, and then mollying window. There's still this huge problem, so you can't really stack too much on A. But I'm really excited to play it. Honestly, I think that changes on maps are always it's kind of challenging, because you have to challenge your mind into thinking new ways on a map you've played for the same straight 6-7 years.
It's probably good for an AWPer like you, right? To be able to play like
For
on
sure.
B hill, looking up to the doors and shit, and being able to take those kind of fights. A striker, I know you are going to have loved the fact that Device just brought up statistics when talking about this, right?
Curious about where did you find that out, by the way? Where did you see that?
Honestly, I sometimes just browse some like random tweets if I get tagged in a minute.
Okay.
I think it's the Stay and Pit Twitter account. Those guys always post like retake statistics and stuff like that.
And I always think it's really funny to look at like stupid statistics as well, where it just doesn't make any sense. But
that's my life, man. I love that.
It's funny because you can just sometimes you can relate so hard, and sometimes you're just like, what? It's never been an issue for us.
So what's the dumbest statistic that comes to mind?
It's been something like the percentages of rounds people buy dual elites when they win like pistol rounds. So something stupid like that. Also, like, because people that do that probably have momentum and are winning, it's like the success rate on them are stupidly high, if I remember correctly. At least they were at one point.
Okay, so I don't know how much we need to dive into this change necessarily, because
I had one issue that I can bring up with it, or not an issue. It's just I feel like in a lot of cases the fact that the doors were inverted is not going to really change much about like certain setups, because I don't know if it's actually smokable from
tunnels.
Yeah,
because if it is, then like you get an execute towards B and you still smoke it off, and the AWPer like in window gets mollied off.
Don't really execute towards B because it's kind of clunky and kind of slow and everything, and people see the smoke, so you can counter it. So.
It's taking
but you can still smoke off the AWP, right? Like very easily, if that's the case.
Sure.
So that's kind of my issue with it. That it's like in a lot of cases, I feel like it's not going to be viable for an AWPer to be like the only one holding B, or just like to be the supportive one in front of B and having an angle. So.
I think the general meta around those two is you have to play a rifle close B, and you can't molly the tunnels in the beginning. You have to smoke it and play really close, because otherwise the Ts will just set up for a smoke, molly, pop, flash, and then just go in. And as I said, if you lose B bomb side in the beginning of the round, you can basically just save. That's probably why people are just saving so often, right? So I don't really think it allows people to play that differently. And I don't think, as you said, like reverting the doors, it might have some nostalgia to it, but I don't think we'll see the biggest changes revolving around the B bomb side, for sure not.
The thing is, like, I see it as a small positive for the CTs, but like in some cases, in like those 3v3s and stuff like that, where people won't be executing and will be playing maybe like a contact play, like then you can maybe see the CTs having a slightly higher win rate. But it's, on the other hand, it's not really helping the Ts in any way almost. So I think it's just like a good small change just to see how it works.
The thing that I hope what happens is it stops, or at least slows down, the B rush a little bit, right? Because having to deal with a long rush and a B rush, well, that is fucked. Like the idea that you have to deal with both of those at the start of the round, and they're both extremely strong, and you have to dump so much utility just to stop it. Like, to me, if you can now know that the Ts at least have to get one player who might be a little bit late on the rush because he's throwing a smoke, and as everybody's limping out tunnels, maybe the AWPer playing retake on B hill or the rifle can get one kill to at least give you a 5v4 retake, and then knowing that you can Molotov car extremely easy now, and almost that side of the site with the smoke tunnels is basically yours. Like, it's obviously there's going to be situations where it's not, but that for me right there are the two little changes that I hope balance it out a little bit more, right? It's obviously not a massive one, so it's not a huge change, but let's see. Let's wait and see. I want to see some matches on. Like we said, hopefully Complexity versus Big starts going on that one shortly.
We actually have played 2 matches or 2 maps already. There was
nice.
Complexity, Hotseat, and then Dignitas and Fate. I think that was the one that they lost the series on.
Okay, that's cool. I might go take a look at those games after, but we'll keep her moving. Now, teams handed ownership conflict ultimatum. Striker or Prof, which one of you would like to tell everybody at home what this is all about?
I think I was on vacation when this came out, so I'm just handing it to Striker.
Well, there's just a bunch of players who have a certain amount of percentages owned in different organizations, right? The biggest one probably would be the Brazilian guys in who are obviously a part of the cycle now because of the whole how it works. So there's direct conflict of interest there. I think it's like Fallen and Dead from MIBR, then Zeus from EG
isn't noted for some reason.
Well, maybe Fallen not anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
it's
sure.
Taco and it's Coldzera as well.
Dead, Zeus, Taco. So like 3 different teams or players from the 3 different teams have a certain amount in So there's an obvious conflict of interest there. Then there's Get Right having a part of NIP, and Lurpus obviously being like part owner and ends in some minority. So that's basically what it's about. Valve trying to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest like that.
Okay, so I suppose the first thing with this is when all this came out during the Road to Rio or before the Road to Rio, there was a lot of like finger pointing and stuff, and people were like, why is Valve not doing anything about this? I want to kind of obviously, right, this is a very nuanced issue. I'm not an expert on contracts by any means. There's probably legal teams that need to get involved, all those kind of bits and pieces there. And when you look at all of that and you throw all that in, there was obviously a period of time that needed to be taken for them to work out where the conflict of interest were, what they thought could potentially be exploited, and those bits and pieces, right? So now that this has come on out, they're giving them until the Rio Major, is it, to fix these, Striker?
It was just before or something like that, yeah.
Okay, so look, I don't want to say that people are, could just put things in the names of their family members or all those kind of other bits and pieces. Like I don't fucking know the laws or the business or any of that kind of bullshit. But is this something that it's so hard, right? Because obviously Fallen is somebody who basically brought up the entire Brazilian scene with the Gamers Academy thing, right? Like you think about all that kind of stuff that he did, like he nurtured and brought up an entire country of Counter-Strike, and then obviously some of the stuff he was doing, well, I don't think Fallen is actually involved. I think Fallen's okay now. I think he was one of the names that was off of that list. So maybe I'm going down the wrong way here.
Yeah, but I think like your point was, let's say the team that was Games Academy was the Taco, FNX, Coldzera, and I don't know who else. 2 other players that came to NA.
Kenny
was
Lucas.
Literally, yeah, Kenny and Lucas. That was a team. They came to NA literally by the organization, by the project that was made by Fallen. So they're literally paid by Fallen, and they were competing there. And in the end, that really did help them to do something, to create a career and all of that. But in another way, they surely played. Maybe they didn't play against each other. Who knows? But there is that kind of a weird situation where you want to do the right thing, but in that you put yourself in a situation where like MIBR playing against that's not like that really shouldn't be happening. Probably that's not the greatest thing. And then there's also minority ownership. Like Devices currently has some share, I presume, in Astralis. And let's say you leave the team, then you're in an issue that you have to kind of sell off that, and maybe for not the ideal price and stuff like that. That's like what Get Right is in right now, having like 2% of NIP. So it's where do we draw the line? And a lot of things are kind of complicated. But
I think it's pretty simple, right? The idea of competitive integrity needs to be held above all else. I think that right there is I'm not in any position to define that myself. But I think if there is any air or any possibility of any collusion behind the scenes, then that there will always be a question mark, whether or not it's true, whether or not they did anything. If people can point a finger and ask a question about it, then it brings it into question, right? And as long as we can avoid that with our game, then I think we're going in the right direction. So I'm not too sure if we need to spend a lot of time on this one. Device, I assume, do you have anything you want to say about this?
No, I completely agree with you. I just think that you just have to remove any conflict of interest that could be, even though it's not probably going to be a conflict of interest within the game, as long as there is a just a little tiny percentage of something happening, then people will always assume the worst. And I think that if you can remove it, then best case scenario, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go on to one where we can direct the questioning directly to you. This is Snappi to contact. Now, this was actually something which I think we flirted with the idea on a previous show that might actually be a good idea. So do you want to speak to at least your knowledge of Snappi and how much you think he can bring to this contact team? And then we'll kind of divulge into the rest of the bits and pieces.
For sure. I think that they've always had a great team. When they had Nixa and Hunter, they were even better, in my opinion. Of course, I think that when Hunter left them, they didn't really feel I don't know really what happened within their team, but things just started going the wrong way. And I can speak only for like knowing Snappi for a short amount of time. He's as well a player that makes the players around him play better. So nothing bad there. I think it's it's gonna be a good lineup. I think that with all of the young people coming into the team, it's always nice to get some older players to kind of push them in the right direction. I think that Snappi is one of those guys that can help make players become more aware about the team and not about the individual status, about having good stats and maybe looking good so you can get picked up by another team, but more focused on winning, how you win as a team, and how you like develop into a good player that has the right priorities.
Okay, so I just sent you, Lucas, the article from HLTV.org, but can you bring that up for us and just go down to the lineup? Because I think, unless I'm getting my countries wrong, Prof and Striker, you guys kind of live in an area near where Emmy and Letney are from, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Letney's on the bench and Emmy's on the main roster. What
Honestly,
do we make of this?
He's not even on the bench officially.
Okay.
Like, they didn't say who is moving out of the roster. They just said this is the roster that we're using for the CS Summit 6, and they didn't disclose like what's going on long term or anything. So potentially they're both going to be replaced. Maybe they want to do another thing. Maybe not. Maybe they're just trying this out and Letney's going to come. Like, I honestly, like, I don't have anything confirmed. I would presume they want to replace both. I was just my like complete no knowledge behind it. Just my presumption here.
Okay. Striker.
Yeah, same. That makes the best sense for me, just because obviously we were talking about this before with, you know, Emmy going from player to coaching and then back to player, just kind of out of necessity. There you go. So that's something that he was obviously the first one on the chopping block. So I'm a little bit surprised that it was Letney, but then there was the whole situation with Letney that he didn't play in Flashpoint under like slightly mysterious circumstances. So God knows what's happening there.
Wasn't it Visa though? I don't know if it was.
I think it was like a combination of Visa and like personal issues or something, or like personal issues causing visa problems basically, or something along those lines. I think that's what was happening. So that part of it also makes me kind of think that Emmy is going to be on the chopping block whenever there's a player that can replace him. Basically, I think that makes good sense to me.
I have a question for Device though.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of off topic. Talking about Snappi playing for Astralis. Obviously, it is kind of ironic because Snappi was supposed to go to Fun Plus Phoenix, and that was like almost set. And in that team, there was a guy named Desetag, and then that guy decided to go to Astralis, and then the whole like deal fell apart. And then Desetag is like, okay, I'm gonna play for Astralis, but then Snappi plays for Astralis before him. Like that is kind of ironic, I have to say.
Yeah,
and then in between of all of that, Snappi almost goes to Mongolia, and then he doesn't, and now he's in contact. So
he's having an amazing journey. No worries about that. Yeah, for sure. I think there's been a lot of memes. Yeah,
he's going Mr. Global in a fucking global pandemic where you literally can't move anywhere. This is amazing.
For sure. But as you said, I think at one point also they should probably look into like building a 4-man young team around Snappi. That's something I would have done as the organization, probably trying to pick up an FPL talent or something. There's a lot of good players in FPL that are without an organization, that are like interesting prospects, especially for international teams. So I think that's probably the direction to go in the future for sure.
Give us a name.
I think that's Spings. I don't know if you heard about him, but he's really good in FPL. He's actually my numero uno to
Who?
Bings, he's called.
Okay.
He's from Israel.
Okay.
Okay.
He's really
Alright.
good.
That's a
Shout out to
years
him.
old.
outside of the box one right there.
For sure.
All right. So yeah, because we won't get stuck too much in that team. We're eating through time here, boys. So we're gonna keep this one chugging along. We've got Big winning DreamHack Masters. Now, I think that the way that Big have been playing in recent times is pretty fucking good. I've tuned into those games and I wasn't even working, which is pretty surprising. I'm kidding, guys. I watch all the games. Don't worry, relax. But look, watching them play, they had a lot of their players peaking, right? And this has to come off of the addition of Keto and Sirison because, well, obviously the hard work of Tabson and the other guys there, like this, and Zentara's getting used to just German better and all those bits and pieces. But I was watching them play, and I don't know if there is a better scout player in the world right now than Sirison.
No way.
That guy
No
was
way. He's
nuts.
so good. Holy shit. Like, I've been watching him like this entire run.
I have to say, as you said, like hitting the peak level of some of the players, at least the peak they've had so far is probably true. It's also one of the things I noticed a lot when I was playing in FPL, like they're just instant. And I think that's really important when you're playing these online games where you can't adapt that much if you're just hitting your shots. I think that you're going to beat a lot of teams. And Sirison is also a guy that's like, he's creating so much space for his team and he's doing a lot of opening frags. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do as an AWPer because it's easier to get an opening frag as an AWPer, right? So if you can do that consistently and that's something he's been doing really well, then it's just going to create an easy path for the team to win a lot of rounds that are crucial, right?
And it's also that it's just they've always had a solid system. I think Big. It's just the problem has always been the talent, the depth, right? And now basically like they don't really have a weak link outside of maybe you could look at Dizian, but obviously he's put in roles where he's supporting a lot. Like you can see it especially in this team where he has all the stars around him. So like now that they actually have the talent to back up that system where Sirison is a fucking X factor as hell. It's insane how much what kind of shots he can hit and what rounds he can turn around or just win on his own, like the scout plays that we saw in the second rounds against, was it FaZe?
G2,
might have been. Oh, G2, yeah, maybe. But it's just like that sort of X factor that Big have only previously had in Tabson maybe. Then like you basically have three guys like that now on that team, and that's a massive upgrade.
I wanna just like give a lot of praise to Big, obviously, right? But Prof, what the fuck is going on with G2 and their mentality in some of these games, mate? Because I don't know how they lost Mirage. I don't know what happened there.
Can I say something?
Go for it.
For sure. I think sometimes
we have the expert right here.
When the meme takes over, like we had this issue, right? Everyone knew we were joking, and we kind of started joking around with it ourselves. And in some way, I think that created a downward spiral where everyone knew what was going to happen, but nobody was speaking about how we handle it. And when we actually manned up and grabbed our balls and we started speaking about the real issues that were actually happening, then things started working out. I think being honest with each other and opening up is really important. But when the meme takes over, like it's something I see in a lot of teams. They have this reputation, and if the reputation starts like coming true, then it's just
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. It's so weird. You can see it. You can just see, and everyone knows it's gonna happen, and they probably know them themselves. So they probably remove maybe 10% of their focus. I have a little angry dog here.
You have to show him off, obviously, now.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's a very good point, right? Like Maniac, myself, and Samler, when we just did a lot of Deaths for Blast, quite a lot of our conversation, because look, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. It's quite clear to see that players are fatigued and tired and having to go from the complexity. One was the perfect example that you use a grand final straight into the first round of a single elimination fucking thing for the major. Like that level of stress and fatigue and timing, having to time your peak and making sure that you're at 100% for every game. I wake up every day and I don't feel 100%. So I don't know how people have an expectation that 5 individuals plus a coach for the basically 3 months straight are able to perform at 100%. It's like,
can I say something smart again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not about the 100%, but it's about If you have 80%, you have to use 100% of the 80%. So if you know you have 80%, then there's also like focus going into knowing I have 80% today, or maybe 70. If I use 100% of those 80%, then it's probably gonna be enough. It's all I can do. But if I let that affect me, knowing I woke up tired, something is annoying me, then it's gonna remove some percentages as well, and you're just going downwards at that point. So you need to use 100% of what you wake up with that day. That's one good mentality to
This reminds
use.
me of the I think it's DDK and Elige podcast when Elige was talking about like the ABC game, and like if you know it's a kind of not the best day, it's like the B game, so you know what you're doing in your B game. You're not doing the same peaks and stuff as you're doing on the A game.
For sure.
So I like when I hear multiple people saying things that are kind of the same but in different words, then I know that there's something to it. You know, it's not like you just read it in a book and you're just like paraphrasing it. It's just like people have gotten to the same conclusion but like doing different stuff, so that I think that means something
for sure.
All about the percentages. I like that too.
So do we want to dive in any more on what happened in DreamHack Masters, or do we want to get to the more recent Blast event?
I think we can go
let's
on.
go Blast, yeah.
Okay, because when we get into Blast, after we get through that, we're probably going to have a quick conversation about the best of 5 with 1 map advantage and a double elimination with the best of 3 and no map advantage. But we'll get to that. I want to hear some opinions on that one. For Blast, if you didn't tune in, obviously that event started all the way back in late January. That's when we were on LAN. Everything was still normal. And then we've had to change and shift things to online. So if you missed it, ladies and gentlemen, what happened was they separated into 2 different divisions, kind of like what happened with the Pro League, and we had the EU side of things, which had obviously a lot more household names. But for people who aren't familiar, Complexity have spent the better part of the last 3 months in Europe just boot camping, and they went on to win the European side of things. EG went on to win the North American side of things. But let's start with you here, Prof. In terms of the type of Counter-Strike that we saw from Complexity, were you impressed?
Overall, I would say they played pretty well. Like I think they played that similar to Vitality in a way, like kind of disruptive, kind of like anti-stratty. I mean, they even said that themselves, and it's funny because that's the storyline that started at the beginning of Blast, and when they beat you guys, they beat Astralis and they beat Vitality, right, or Navi, and then they finished second. So it's kind of the same storyline that built them all the way until the end here and until the win. Even though I think Vitality probably should have taken that game overall, I think the fatigue factor definitely played into it at the end of that second, like the grand final best of 3. But like props to Complexity for playing so well overall.
Okay. Yeah, no, I enjoyed what I was seeing right there. But Device, with this Complexity team, right? Now, you obviously played against them earlier in the year, and I'm not sure if you practiced against them or whatever, but did you think that they were going to be like a team who could contend in this kind of fashion?
Both yes and no. I think they have some interesting pieces in their team. Young guys that need experience, especially on the big stage. I think that's maybe also playing a little bit into their favor, right? That they have big contracts. They're expected to win, and now they've actually won a huge tournament. Like there's a big prize pool at Blast, and as you said, like winning in EU is probably a little bit more. I could say like it's probably deserving a little bit more credit than winning an NA, in my opinion. I don't know where the level of the NA teams are, so we don't really know, right? Anyways, no, I didn't expect them to win a big tournament in the first half year of the first season, but I was really impressed with what I've seen. As you said, like the anti-stratting is something us as players in Astralis notice pretty quickly, like nade stacks, something throwing your smokes differently if you know like playing different maps, especially in Nuke. Like they're playing Nuke, they know that the CTs like to extinguish the first smoke and the jump through smokes in Yard, right? Something like throwing your smokes differently and using different tactics, always adapting to the opponent, is something we notice really quickly because it's something we do ourselves. And I think that especially the nade stacks and adapting is something they've been really good at. One thing that I've seen though on their player camps is that they can get pretty easily frustrated when they are losing rounds, and especially yesterday you could see like visible emotions, which sometimes is really positive, but it can also be negative if it goes like into a situation where you're experiencing too much negativity, then like there's a toxic environment in the TeamSpeak. You've also seen a team like Na'Vi, where I think that with I don't know, I don't speak the language, but the small things we've seen from the team, I like. At least the narrative is that the TeamSpeak is it's a toxic environment. It's hard to be yourself in some way, right? And it makes people take less risks and play more safely. Play not to lose instead of playing to win.
Wow, that's an interesting take.
I feel like for Na'Vi, it works
yeah.
the complete other way. It's just like the more crazy it gets on the TeamSpeak, the crazier the team gets, and the more peaks they do and stuff like that. I feel like Na'Vi and Vitality are the same in this sense, and Complexity actually in part too. But I think they are actually the best out of those three in that case.
I think as well with the Complexity thing, obviously for these guys in terms of tier 1 grand finals, for a lot of them, that's their first time, or that's their first time with all those eyes and that level of pressure and so much on the line. And that, because obviously when Jason Lake comes out and says he's going to build the Juggernaut, you alluded to it just there perfectly, Device, about all the extra pressure that's on them. So for them to perform, and it's obviously an emotional thing based on the fact that Obo and Rush as well have been stuck, well, not stuck, but they've opted to stay away from home for this long amount of time to continue to perform and practice. And I think that's really accelerated them as a team. So we're seeing these fantastic results out of them now. But let's quickly flick on over the EG situation here, Striker. Now, when we went into the grand final against MIBR, they'd already lost to them. Did you feel like it was going to happen again?
Actually, the thing is, like, it's so hard to make out what's going to happen in NA just because they play each other literally all the time. And it's not like there's massive like one-sided rivalries in NA at this point. It feels pretty back and forth outside of like FURIA and MIBR, which obviously happened for the first time at this tournament. But other than that, like the people beat each other all the time, and it happened even like all the way last year. So it's like literally every NA match I go into, I have no idea what's going to happen just because of that. So it's like it's so hard to make an informed opinion about what's happening in NA at this point.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing, right? The level is difficult to get a grasp on, but there was some positives there. Did you guys see Breeze was actually
he was
having a
yeah.
And that right there is something which, when I look at that kid, he mechanically as a player is super gifted, but I don't know what it is as to why he had dropped off in recent times. I didn't know, like, because when you think about it, when Daps was there, they were making top 4 at basically every event they were going to, right? Then Stan came in, they get the high in New York, and then from there their results are super inconsistent. Now we can put the tail end of last year down to burnout, but this year, like, their schedule, it's still been pretty rough. I won't lie. They've been having to play a lot more online matches and all those bits and pieces, but I felt like that would have been a really good time for them to retool and refocus. I think the addition of Zeus is going to be a good one overall, because he might be able...
Would you say it's the best edition of 2020? Maybe?
Now, my friend Moses, he says a lot of things, my friend Moses, and that one there I probably wouldn't agree with. There's probably going to be a lot of good roster moves, but it might be one that, if you look at it in terms of what the team needed, maybe you could justify it as being a very good one from that point of view. Because one of my issues with a lot of these North American teams, and I'll lump Liquid into the same bucket, and I'll put 100 Thieves into that same bucket as well, is quite a poor mentality when things go wrong. I think that playing in English-speaking teams myself and seeing certain type of... If you look at Naf, right, as a person, you can see that he's quite reserved. But then when he has like an interview and he's like pretty cocky and stuff, that's the way I think he is in the server. But to deal with problems and when issues are going wrong, I feel like he might be the type of player to vocally shut down, but in the game fire up, right? Like he'll go for more crazy plays, or like I think like for Stewie as a player, when he starts getting frustrated, he starts to emotionally lose it, right? So everybody loses it in different ways, but I don't think that with any of these North American teams, that they're all on the same wavelength to be able to keep themselves like calm enough, right? Now, if Zeus can come and be the emotion, the good emotion for EG, because I think Stan can be good emotion when things were working. We'll remember him pounding the desk when they were winning in that grand final, and that level of emotion is contagious, right? Zeus has come from Brazil. He's always played with passionate teams, and if he can have that for the team all the time, it's a very difficult thing to do. I think that will help the guys who are feeling down and out. And no offense to Chet, right? No offense to Chet whatsoever. To me, he didn't seem like that type of guy. Prof, what do you think?
I think they're completely different. Like as people, completely different people. Like Zeus and Chet, I don't think you can find like two more like, how do you say, diagonally positioned people like overall. So yeah, I see the benefit there. Also, just the way the whole NA thing played out was super weird. It's just continuation of all of these. Not say weird, like when you look at the matches, you can see all of these teams and players have good players. They know how to play CS. It's not like a super surprise. But when you look at all of the winners we had EG, then Complexity, then we had FURIA before winning, okay, but then we had Big also winning an event where all of the top teams are. It's like nothing makes sense. It's just like a compilation of everyone can win. Just like give everyone one title. You win a trophy. You win a trophy. Except G2, but you're number one in the world, even though you didn't win anything. It's like everyone wins. It seems like.
Yeah, that's a
except Astralis,
mate.
Oh, you guys won too. Come on.
Yeah. When they play out that clip at Blast, that I'm sitting there in the ad break waiting to come back, and the last little quip, I go like, well, it feels like everybody won this weekend except Astralis. I'm like, I didn't realize I was that much of a cunt. Why did I say that? I was like, what the fuck? But yeah, all right. Now this next bit, what is this about? FaZe third place mental block. Who Prof? What is this?
I mean, did they not finish third the last 3 tournaments,
okay,
including and the 4 if we include the charity event? But let's not include that. Finishing third consistently, owning group stages, going like 7-0, I think was it in Road to Rio, going into the playoffs, then losing to teams like they shouldn't be losing to. It feels like all the time. They lost to Big now. They lost to who? They lose to? They lost to Vitality, Complexity, like all of these teams that are below them on the rankings, but only when it comes to like the final matches, like the semifinals or like consolidation finals, upper bracket finals, and then they just lose. Even though overall, I mean, even you're on the FaZe hype train, right? Like you would say, you even said as a hater, not a hater, but like you're kind of skeptical of international teams. Like FaZe look overall as the best team currently, even though they just brought in like a 16-year-old kid. They kind of have the polish overall. When you look at all of the games, they probably have the highest win rate of like maps or something over the last month or two, but they still didn't win anything. So it's weird.
It's probably Complexity just because they played all those home sweet home cups and won like 4 of them or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure FaZe is up there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you Device got a chance to watch a lot of or any of FaZe recently? And what do you make of them at the moment?
I mean, like I've always had kind of the same attitude when we have to play them and looking at them is they have the talent, they have the experience, they just don't have the right mixture. I feel like there needs leadership, and that's probably also a reason why they finished third place. I can have a lot of experience in that. They need leadership to step in and take responsibility at the right time. And then I also think they would be a crazy team to play against if they probably anti-stratted more. I remember some interviews where they were maybe just looking at bots or something like that. There's a lot of more digging into stuff you can do. So I don't really know where the mental block is. I just know they have a lot of things to work with, right? They have a lot of different paths they can go. If it's the psychological part, if it's the anti-stratting, if it's leadership. As you said, they added a 16-year-old guy who is really good. I think Brogy is really, really, really good. They're picking up a lot of good talent, but everyone has always been saying the same thing, like why not bring an amazing in-game leader? They had Kerrigan, he's an amazing in-game leader. They won a lot of tournaments. They didn't win the major, which I think if they would have won that, he would maybe still been playing with them. But it's for sure an interesting way to go if they would go that way in the future. There's a lot of good leaders out there.
Here's one thing that I want to ask you specifically, because FaZe are kind of a special team in that their AWPer is nowhere near like a classic AWPer that you see in any other team, that's kind of used for the entry fragging and trying to get you an advantage and play the angles and stuff like that. Broky is much more passive, much more supportive, doesn't really go for entry frags. That's very much on Rain and Nico. So what do you think about that philosophy in general? Obviously, that's not something that you've played it as just because you've always been the AWPer who's been going for the entry kills and have been very good at it. So how do you see that?
It's an interesting take on how to play different maps. I think that on Nuke he plays a similar style. As Simple does, he always go to heaven. He always throws nades towards the outside position. He's sometimes, of course, he's positioning himself down secret and stuff like that. But he is playing, as you're saying, a supportive role, and I think it could work. But as I said, like statistically, the AWP has a better chance at landing an opening kill. It's just how it is that you have to land one shot. So in my opinion, like you've seen the rise of Maka, who is a guy that just runs around with AWP, farlig, a guy that recently signed with Godsend, AWPer that just runs around, because if you don't know where the AWPer is, then if you just walk into the wrong angle, you're dead, right? So there's two different ways to play it. I just think that FaZe have also a lot of good entry fraggers, so their play style is unique and is working for them. And I don't think talent is the right way. They've tried it at least, right? I think that if they got a really good leader, I don't know how comfortable Nico is with leading, but he has the experience now, right? So it might as well work out. But there's a lot of good MG leaders that would be really annoying to play against that talent, and then mixtured with sort of like how G2 have done it. Like they have a really good system and they play amazing CS and amazing individualists.
I know you're kind of working against yourself, but who would you propose for FaZe doing game lead?
Oh, that's tough. It's so hard because I think there's a lot of personality that has to be weighed in. Like you really gotta be I think not strict, but like you really need to believe in yourself.
Authority.
To have authority and balls to just like, because you're gonna play with some high profile names like Cole, Nico. Those guys have won everything there is to win, or almost. Nico is gonna get there one day for sure. So yeah, one guy that just has a good understanding of the game, how to develop the meta, and then of course the authority. It's hard for me to say because I haven't played with that many in-game leaders. I think that Kerrigan was really good for them, but of course that didn't work out. So they'll just have to test out.
I wanted to touch on something because you mentioned farlig and you mentioned Maka. It sounded like you watched them play, or either personally watching the demos, or maybe someone prepared some clips for you or something like that. Like how much insight do you have into these like up and coming lower tier AWPers that pop up? Like do you, like when Maka was popping off, just like first time stepping into these like tier 1 events but online, were you going and watching his demo, seeing how he plays? Like what is the approach to like learning new stuff from new players?
So actually, we were playing against Heretics and we were preparing on the maps we're gonna pick and the map we expected them to pick, and I was just thinking to myself, this guy's a crazy good AWPer, and he had the philosophy I played with back in 2018, where I was running a lot more around with AWP. I think that going into 19 and playing that year, I tried to remain more stationary because people were expecting me to, let's say if I take a kill down mid in Inferno, I would rotate to B, and same if I go B, I would rotate to A. So like people are starting to figure it out. But then I kind of realized that with this online play, like these AWPers that are just running around and taking crazy duels, like if you're hitting your shot, you're basically winning the rounds for the team. And watching the demos of how Heretics play around that on the CT side, just I wanted to see more, so I just watched a bunch of his demos on the different maps, and farlig has just been putting up like statistically good numbers. So I was like, okay, let's see, is he just being played around, or is he actually like a crazy good AWPer? And in my opinion, he's also a big name to probably becoming a good player in the scene.
That makes us feel pretty happy over here at the HLTV Confirmed.
SPUNJ, I want to say something before. I just had read a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers how everyone wanted Alexi B to join FaZe when Ents benched him, right? That was like a thing, like that was gonna fix FaZe. And then I did an interview with Nico, and he said like they heard that he's not the right player for them. And then everyone said like, ego Nico, blah blah, stuff like that. But now look at OG. a team where you have like a lot less established players than in FaZe. And Xyp9x is just like judging by the comms and TeamSpeak and stuff that we saw. Like Xyp9x is having trouble controlling that team. Imagine that in FaZe, then it would be like, it probably is true that he wasn't the guy for FaZe, right?
You have to do a lot of screening. I think that's. I think, as you say, that team is probably one of the hardest teams to find an in-game leader for, and that's just on assumptions, right? It could probably be for some guys a team that's easy to lead, especially when like you're winning. But when things start to get tough, you need to be able to speak about the things that some players don't want to speak about, which is repetitive mistakes and stuff like that. And especially repetitive mistakes and habits you have when things are going bad in an official game. If you're taking the same duels you're taking when you're having a good game as when you're having a bad game, like it's easy to fix, but if you've never really like touched on the issue, it would be hard to fix it.
Okay, well, I guess Alexi, still in terms of his career, is still pretty young, right? When you think about how Ents Meteoric Rise and all those bits, and he's, you know, a bit of a younger guy as well than the other ones. So, look, I think the FaZe in-game leader question mark is one that I'm sure the FaZe camp has thought about for a very long time. I wish in-game leaders grew on trees. I think it would make everybody's life a little bit easier. But I want to get into a topic, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all my friends out there, everybody, that made me very, very, very angry earlier in the week. The most angry I think I've been until, so I want to attempt to objectively talk about this. I had planned to do a bit of a revelation of let's take a look at past grievances that these people have done, airing all the way back to 2015. However, I spoke to my lovely parents and they said, "What's the point, Chad?" And they're right. What the fuck is the point? So let's just talk about what happened and let's talk about what should happen. MIBR versus FURIA. Now, obviously, there is a lot on the line. And obviously, there is a very, very large fan base that supports one of those teams a lot more than they do the other. Now, if you missed this, if you didn't catch this, if you didn't see this, I don't blame you. It was late at night. That's fine. Maybe you didn't
Device
read it
as well.
Okay.
Hard to not catch the aftermath, though.
So
I honestly haven't seen this, so I'm excited.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to taint anybody here. So if I start to get a little bit biased in what I'm saying, Prof. Striker, I would like one of you to take over here because I like I said, I obviously feel very, very strongly about this situation. Now, there was a match between the two teams, and FURIA are in Florida and MIBR are in LA. Now, there was something to do with the servers, the whatever. Now, fuck it, we'll go in order. So there was an issue in the server. They were playing Inferno. There was apparently lagging coming out from the side of MIBR. They wanted to change server, but it probably wasn't a server issue if they were the only ones lagging. I'm not certain. But if only one team's lagging, then it's their internet connection to the server, not the server for everybody. And there was an issue in a round, and it was very close. I believe the scoreline was like 12-12 or 12-13. It was on the first map. And Arts pushed up Banana with the AWP, and I believe Fur had the better spawn. So Fur had taken the AWP from Fallen, and he was crouching, peeking to take the line at the half wall, to the T coming up to the half wall. And Art kills Fur. Now, what ensued after this was them going onto the B bomb site. The camera angle quickly changed to Fallen, who had frozen or had stopped. And at that point, that is when I do believe that they called not live. Now, the question about them lagging, that's not a question. They were obviously lagging. The question about the rules traditionally state, because everybody's basically copied ESL's rule book, that if damage has been done, that there will not be a restart. Now, obviously, guys, when we take into consideration the footage and everything that came out afterwards, and in that regard, I think everybody would be more than happy for there to have been a restart. But it is the issue of how we got there. So FURIA continued to play out the round because they were playing as by the book. And this is what we should all do. For all of you out there, no matter what level of competition that you are playing to, play until the fucking whistle. You can only control what you can control. You are not in control of any bullshit that's going on with the PC crash, with the internet, with any of that stuff. That is out of your hands. Does it suck? Yeah, it fucking sucks. But play to the whistle, and then we'll have a discussion. So what happened after that? The game stopped. The question came in about having it restarted within the text. You guys can go and check all the logs if you would like. It's been translated, I believe.
Yeah, it's in the demo as well, just in Brazilian. I'm like Portuguese.
And Art has said something along the lines of let Gary, the coach, and Dead work it out. Now, after that, it didn't really like seem that heated, like in terms of the text that was coming through, but the sentiment that then followed after that was that by FURIA players leaving it to the coach, which personally I think is the correct decision. I don't think players should have any say in those kind of scenarios. They should leave it to the admin and their coaches or management to work out this stuff. You're only playing the game. You're only playing the game. Now, what happened was they were having the discussion, and there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But during this, because we're in an online environment, a video from Fallen with his hundreds of thousands of followers was put online during the conversation. Now,
this is one of the benefits of the online era. You can just like during a technical break, just tweet the video for everyone to just like go on your side. That could not happen on LAN, so good shit, I think. Real.
Yeah. So now, when that conversation is going on, now I'm going to go away right now, guys, from the story. I want everybody to be quite clear on this. I want you to come on a fucking journey with me, right? And I'm very sorry that I'm going to upset a lot of Brazilian fans here. I don't want to upset you. I'm not speaking out against your team. I'm not trying to upset the apple cart here. I am just genuinely telling you what this would make me feel. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about what Fallen has done for his scene. And there is no doubt about what he has created and what he has done. He is a legend for what he has been able to accomplish as a player, as a person, and all those kind of bits and pieces. But for 1 second, let's consider if we're Art or Quesarado or Yuri or any of these kids who looked up to what Fallen and Coldzera and all these guys, fuck, I'm getting emotional, would have looked up to them as legends, right? As people who curated a scene, who have achieved so much, like respected them and loved them and looked at them like they were their idols. And then they turn on them in obviously a game that is very, very important, and they put them on blast on social media in front of hundreds of thousands of people who we know they're a very passionate fan base, right? We know that they're a very passionate fan base, and I love that they're passionate, but they direct so much anger and what it was for those kids, right? Like those kids, could you imagine like how fucking horrible that must feel to be in the middle of a game, right? And have that turned on you, right? These people that you once fucking respected the shit out of turning on you in the middle of a game that it's your fucking job, right? And then after the aftermath of all of this, like the tweets that came out, like Fur calling them shit. I don't think he's calling them shit players. I think what he was trying to insinuate was there were shit people for not the take I took from the MIBR account was they didn't think that FURIA were being men and that they were being fair play. But this is a job with hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, and they're trying to be professional about this, right? Leave it up to the admins, leave it up to your coach. Like, this shouldn't be a conversation of, hey, let's like, of course there should have been a restart. Of course there should have been, but this is in the middle of the game. And these kids, I could see how frustrated they were after it. They were all losing it. They were all losing it after they didn't want to be in the server anymore, right? They didn't want to be there playing anymore. And it really fucking got to me, man, because I don't understand like how they can do that and then not apologize. They didn't apologize. They did like some comments and stuff, but I don't know, man. I'm losing it. Someone take over. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, like the gist of MIBR's response to everything was just like that it was an insult that FURIA even like didn't instantly just restart the round, even though, let's even put aside everything about the rules and that FURIA shouldn't even be asked about what they think about the restart. It's just like rules, admin decision, and information from both teams. It's not like your opinion as a team, like, do you want to restart or not? And MIBR somehow took that as an insult because of their tenure, their history, trophies won, and all of that stuff. Like, if we say something, we'd never lie. Everything we say is always 100% true. Like, that is number one. It's not true. Like, that is kind of bullshit, because MIBR and SK, Luminosity, and those guys, they also had a lot of controversy, especially like even tied directly to like match restarts, to map round restarts back to that was what was the RGN back when with Hiko. A lot of drama came from that.
That's true.
And then Hiko had to go like get bodyguards to go to Brazil and all of that stuff. So like that, what happened to Hiko there was the same thing more or less that happened to FURIA now, even though FURIA wanted to restart. So the thing is, like, they even said, yeah, okay, we'll restart, but they still ended up being like, I don't know, like being the bad guys in the whole story, even though all that they did is just like paused, examined the evidence, said like, oh yeah, this is fine, and that's it. Like, it's just like a very bad, I don't know. I don't know why we need to have this. This is not banter. This is not like fun. It's just bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine playing football and then the judge goes, "Do you think this is a yellow card or a red card?" Like, it's
yeah,
and then the other team has to agree afterwards. Like, oh, you should have a red card.
And then Messi's like, it's like, this guy actually said it was a red card, and it's like, it's me, Messi. Like, why would I? What would I ever do like a red card off offense? I would never do that. He thinks I'm that bad. It's obviously not intentional. Let's say it just opens like a whole can of worms that shouldn't even be there. And like Fallen tweeting that out in the middle of everything, it's like, what is the only purpose of tweeting something like that out and not sharing it like between you is to get like the public on your side. And then why do you need that? Like, you really don't need that.
If you have everything like, if everything was correct, and as it, like, if I understand correctly, like afterwards everything was supposed to be restarted because they lagged out beforehand, then there's no need to actually go on social media. And as Chad also says, like, it's really important that the tournament organizers step up, because we've been in these situations crazy amounts of times, and every time I'm just like, okay, why do we?
It always ends one way too. It's just like it never ends well when the players are involved in any sort of decision or, you know, like a controversy on the server. It's just never ends well.
I mean, like the one that's always coming to my head is when Valve gathered all the teams at PGL Krakow and asked, do you want to play with a jump bug where a person is invisible when he's jumping? And like, it's like, I don't even know what to say. It's just crazy, right? And this situation is crazy, and getting people like, as you said, Brazilians especially are people that are really passionate about their team. So of course, if you can get the fans on your side, then it's gonna affect the judges. It's the same way if a judge in football is coaching a home game for a team, and they are booing every time he's making a decision, which is maybe not bad, but in the end, like, it will skewer his point of view a little bit, maybe a few percentages. And if the player complains enough times, it says this is a yellow and this is a yellow, or fakes when he's getting tackled and stuff. Like, you can like get some percentages there, but in CS it should be so easy to write rules. What is right, what is wrong. There is like no reason to complain to admins if like people are not cheating, and people are not cheating. So, you know, like it's such a simple situation. It's such a simple fix. I just can't understand how it can still be a problem.
Yeah, I just think the most important thing that we all need to take away from this, right, is what we were talking about earlier to do with competitive integrity, right? Because by influencing people's emotions, right, you are in that fashion, right? In that fashion, that to me kind of takes away from the competitive integrity, right? Because you are whether they were or they weren't, I'm not going to accuse them. I'm not going to say that they knew what was going to happen. That's not up to me to make that call or assumption. But you're either intentionally or unintentionally weaponizing your gargantuan fan base, right?
For sure.
Like, there's no question on whether or not Fallen has done amazing things and those kind of, like, there's no question. There's no question. I used to like love watching them play. Like, I got to play against them. These guys were guys that, you know, I was watching demos of and spending hours of my time. And it's like people look up to them like idols. And I think that we need to all be much more responsible with how we use social media as players and as talent and as all these bits and pieces, right? Because it's not. I've now been doing this, right? I was a professional Counter-Strike player back in 2008. Social media wasn't like this. I wish it was, you know, it would have been great for my career back then. But in terms of all these bits and pieces, we've all grown and changed a lot. I'm a 30-year-old man now. Have I done things in my life that I think are dumb? Have I said things that are stupid? Do I regret some of the things in the past? Of course I do. But I learn, and I think that we should all learn, and we should all be stepping in the right direction where we want to do good, right? We should be showing the next generation of people who look up to these players and teams, etc., who idolize them, what the right things to do are, not what the wrong things to do are. And look, it's a different culture. I'm not going to pretend to understand. I won't even pretend to understand for a moment. But it just broke my fucking heart to see that go down there. And look, if everyone's cool, can we move on from this? Because I don't want to dwell on it for too long.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. Now, Striker, you're up to the plate, motherfucker.
What's up?
What the hell is happening with these rankings? Lucas, I'm going to send you the link.
Okay.
I'm going to send you the link. We're going to take a look at it because we were talking about this the other week.
I was expecting such a big response of this. Right?
We were speaking about this last week, obviously with the rankings and stuff, and people at home maybe don't understand what's going on with the rankings necessarily, why certain things jump up and down so much, considering the climate we're in. Are you able to help and shed a little bit of light?
Sure. I mean, just to address the elephant in the room, which is Vitality jumping from 10th place to 2nd, right? Which seems like a massive jump. But when you look at the points, it was only like 150 points difference, which makes kind of sense for placing 2nd at like a big European event. It kind of makes sense that you jump like around the 200 point mark, while the winners are probably going to jump a bunch more. It just seems pretty reasonable to me, right? But because it was from 10th to 2nd, I expected a pretty big response. But the reason it's so close in the first place between like the first and I think 12th team, where it's like literally the difference is like 200 points, which is, I feel like it's unprecedented. I don't think we've had a situation like this happen before, not to this extreme at least. But basically, the reason that happens is because the scene is so unstable. So, okay, let me explain it to you like this, right? When Astralis had 1,000 points, which means they maxed out in all of the subcategories, right? That means in every subcategory, the more Astralis win, when they already are on top at the 1,000 points maxed out, the more the rest is going to get scaled down. Like their points going to get reduced, even though they didn't have any worse results or they didn't place badly or anything. They're going to get reduced just based off the 1,000 being the max, and the rest has to be scaled accordingly, right? So that's the reason why sometimes Astralis could be at 1,000 points and the second team could be at 300, because Astralis are just so fucking. That was like a point. There was a point where it was like 1,400. Like there was a massive gap between first and second place. And that was because Astralis were so dominant that everybody had to be scaled the fuck down so much to make up the gap that should exist, right?
I think
the
another
opposite is
example
happening now.
I think another example of like how the ranking works is obviously like it's relative to the number one team, or not the number one team, but number one team in these three subcategories, which are form is just like matches win and lost, and then you have recent lands, and then you have achievements. Recent lands like 3 months, achievements like 6 months, and you have those three categories, and then whoever is the best team in that category has the max points, and everyone else is scaled based on how good they are compared to that team. So just to explain it in a simple way, it's like Astralis at one point had 1,000 points and Liquid at one point had 1,000 points. But in peak, Liquid wasn't as good as peak Astralis. And that's why like the second place team after Astralis had like, I don't know, 400 points, and the second place team behind Liquid had, I don't know, 800 or 700 points. So that's kind of the gist of the whole thing. It's like everything is relative to the top. Here we go, Dogo.
Okay. So So do you have more you want to divulge on this?
Well,
Striker?
that's basically just to explain why it's so close now, right? Obviously,
Okay.
like we've had so many different winners, and we're regionalized, so that even exaggerates the problem. Well, I'm saying problem, just like the issue at hand, right? I'm not even saying it's necessarily a mistake or anything like that. It's just that certain teams can't even play against each other, so that creates even more like diverse results.
More
Like
tournament
different
winners.
teams, yeah, exactly. More tournament winners, like 3 different tournament winners in Europe, 3 different tournaments winners in North America, a bunch of difference in the top 4, even like Fnatic just going from tournament win to like bombing out last and stuff like that. Just this massive inconsistency just creates such close points between all those top 12 teams that this is what's going to happen. So that's why these big jumps are going to happen now a little bit more, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that G2 are the best team in the world, because first of all, they're only like 6 points ahead now, and second of all, like next week if they lose like in CS Summit a couple of matches, they're probably going to drop down.
Okay.
It's just that it just doesn't have the same impact as we would normally have because of how close it is.
Theoretically, Liquid, who are number 11, could be number 1 after like one big tournament win. Maybe not now because they're in NA,
not sure
so
about
they can't really play like so. But let's say theoretically they go to Cologne and win Cologne.
You can say complexity. Like if they win another event, they probably could jump from 10 to 1 because they're 200 points off.
Okay, I understand a lot more now, because I know I'm very confused with all this ranking stuff. Now, Device, we're going to pivot this a little bit because we have you here. We may as well. Why would we waste this opportunity? In terms of the rankings that HLTV.org have and the way that the teams talk about it or the players talk about it or how even you think about it, like, is this like a driving force to be number 1? Do you think it's a good indicator? Like, what's your feelings on it all?
There are definitely situations where I think that so I just had to put the dog down. Where I think that they can be confusing. And there are 90% of the time, I think that they are relatively correct. I think that it's a really good goal. It's a goal we've had like for a long time, always maintaining or trying to maintain the number 1 spot, getting back to the number 1 spot. That's always been the goal of Astralis, right? So it's easy to set the goal because, as you say, it's so much related to the tournaments that are happening right now, and you can just win a tournament, and if you're dominating, then you're gonna stay at the top for a while, and yeah, I think it's a good way to having and maintaining goals as a team. If you want to be top 5, if you want to. The top 10 is maybe a little bit hard because then there are all the qualifiers and maybe you don't get invited to all the tournaments, and breaking into the top 20 is the same thing because you don't get any points almost for playing against the lower tier teams, right? So in the top 10, in the top 5, I think it's a good representative for the teams, but maybe going further down, sometimes at least the team can fall down really quickly, which is also something you are going to see with us because we're not going to play in the Summit. We've not been playing at the blast playoffs and so.
And you also changed players, so that also lost you a lot of points.
Exactly. So, of course, sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt and like have some perspective, but most of the time it's really effective and a good tool for teams to use.
Okay, I won't ask the obvious question of do you think this is the best ranking out of all the rankings, because I think we probably all know the answer to that one right there.
Yeah.
So do we have anything else we want to really get stuck in with the rankings, guys? You want to keep it moving?
We have like 15 minutes. What do we have left?
We got the RMR stuff, which is on right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, other than that,
sure.
We kind of touched on the results, which are just transferred into the rankings more or less.
Okay, yep. So quickly, for those who aren't too familiar with what the whole RMR or CS Summit event is all about right now, obviously the majors, everything's been fucked on up. We need to come up with a way of doing this online. This format is much different from the first one, and I actually want to kind of just quickly get in here. The reason that I believe that the first format that we had, the ESL run in the Road to Rio, was so large and comprehensive was because if you were going to start a ranking, you would want the largest sample size that we could possibly have of teams playing each other as much as possible. Now, in terms of the climate of where that fit in with Pro League right before it, DreamHack right after it, Blast following that, that's obviously obviously shit because teams are tired, fatigued, etc. Planning your peak, all those things aren't great. But the idea, I don't think we can fault that idea too much, because I understand it from that perspective of if we have a lot of games, a lot of teams, we should be able to see where everybody matches on up. So now that I got that out of the way, looking at the qualifier so far, there's already been some results today. Are Dignitas out already?
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Dignitas and Mad Lions.
Okay.
Mad Lions as well?
Yeah, they went out to Pact.
They lost to Pact?
Yep.
And they didn't play the
Dignitas
last qualifier, so they're basically out, right?
I don't think they're out. I think they still. I mean, you could still win the next event, and have 2,500 points, which is probably still enough to be in the top.
For sure, but you have to think about.
You have to be very high, and obviously it has to also depend on the other teams how they do, and you could be left out even if you win the next event. I think there's a chance of that happening.
Do you know if they're still gonna have regional qualifiers when everything opens up, or are they gonna?
I'm pretty sure this year is gonna finish out this way, just because it's just how it started, right? So it just doesn't make sense to suddenly break it up for the last tournament.
Yeah, the problem would be I don't know, let's say someone won the first Australian event, and then they have to play against Fnatic and Astralis in the next one. It will be completely fucked.
The system wouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
With that, if there is an opportunity, I would assume that the TOs, if things start to open back up, maybe they could run the last RMR events on LAN.
Yeah,
obviously still regionally, but at least that's one step in a better direction right there.
Look, it's unlikely anyway that we would have anything global happening in that time, right? In the next 3 months that it needs to happen. So there's always going to be limitations. Not always, but in the current situation, there's going to be a limitation put on certain teams, no matter what do you do. So I think it just makes sense.
Maybe also some players you have to respect. Maybe some players actually have health issues or in a high risk zone. So maybe some people are actually not available to travel at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if that's the case for any teams, but it could be an issue that you have to consider as well.
Can I just quickly dial back, guys, before we jump into today's results too much? Because I wouldn't mind asking Device what he feels about this. Now, we've had a lot of conversations on this panel in the past about, majors, and is the system, a good system for deciding which teams should go to the majors, the legend slots, all those bits and pieces. When you guys obviously had the discussion and you saw this RMR stuff come out, what did you guys think about it? What did you think about the system that they had put in place?
I think the initial thought is you are maybe a little bit spoiled, right? Because we've been at the legend stage almost every time. So we were kind of used to just playing the major. But I think the system is better. I think that there's just a huge drop off in some teams' performance that if you're guaranteed that you were lost in the quarterfinals, you would automatically be there for the next tournament. It's just a weird system, and maybe it's a little bit biased, but I would like to see in the future that the recurring winners are kind of invited like they do with a lot of tournaments. So especially if a team has won IM Sydney, they are guaranteed an invite next year. That's something that is pretty cool. So you have the chance to defend your championship no matter what, if you have a little bit of a drop off or whatever. But I think this is the best system to get the best teams for sure. And maybe they're gonna try to adjust it to make it better in the future, but this is the right step at getting the best teams for the major.
What do you think about the penalties for the roster, the player changes and all of that? Because that was when they announced everything, of course, it was hard to go into the rules and actually see how everything would play out. But then when we saw actually the player changes coming in, it seems like it's a lot of points being lost. But in the end, everyone is losing a lot of points, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Everyone's minus 20% or something by now.
I think there needs to be a penalization system, but I think that to have this work correctly, you also need to have a calendar that works so that teams can actually schedule around this. And that's just, of course, impossible right now, but that is, in my opinion, the ideal situation. So you maybe have a transfer window between some of the tournaments and stuff like that. That would probably be good. The penalization, I don't know, 20% is a lot, and as for our sake, I'm pretty sure Summit probably have liked us to play the tournament, but us not ending up showing up is also kind of bad for our sponsors, probably maybe a little bit for their sponsors, and like you want the teams to play, so the penalty can't be too high. But I think our case is also very unique and not something you will see that often, right? So
it's kind of curious. I'm not sure if you've checked this with Valve or anything, that even if you brought the players back, like you don't gain back the lost points, right?
Nope, you don't.
So you basically get screwed twice just because
Yeah,
like you slot in two
exactly.
players and then just kick them
we
out
would
again.
lose 80%, right?
That's
if we
sick.
lose.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's
Well, not 80, but like
well,
40,
Yeah.
40 of the
Yeah,
first 100 and then 40 of the rest.
scaling.
Of the rest, yeah.
Like
Striker,
64 or whatever.
we
Yeah.
were having a private conversation the other day in our chat. Do you want to tell everybody about
About
what do you
Navi,
mean?
right?
well, it wasn't about Navi
Navi.
in particular. It was about how this system could be.
right.
Striker.
Do we want to leave that? Sorry, yeah, strike. Do we want to leave it, or do we want to tell everybody? I don't know.
It's definitely something that we could talk about, right? So imagine at the end of the last RMR event, you have, let's say, 2,000 points, and you're just below, like the spot below where you would get to a major. You just miss out on the major, right? But theoretically, you could buy out a player from the team above for them to lose 20% of points, so you can jump above them, right? So technically, like, you could buy a spot at the major if you had either enough money or if you were just outside of the cut, and you could force like a player change in the team above you. I don't know how it works contractually. Obviously, like certain teams can just block lineup changes completely and stuff like that. It depends on how your contracts are set up and stuff like that. But I'm sure you could find like a situation where it's possible. Yeah. So that's like a problem that I would have with this rule, where like a team could actually force their way into a major this way.
It could be like literally it could be like Nemiga and Navi finishing below them, like, and this is maybe a team that doesn't have like good contracts or something. You can just steal away a player. Like, there are a lot of things that can happen. Force the player to bench himself, whatever, and you don't even add him because you don't want to lose 20%. But for that major, you use the 5, you jump over them because they lose 20% of the points, and you're at the major. Right?
And it wouldn't even have to be like a completely like non-org, like I assume an Amiga. I don't actually know what kind of org they are, if they're actually getting paid decent money or not. But like to an org like Navi, a spot at the major is, I'm sure, worth at least like $100,000. Like it's a decent amount that you'd pay to get into a major if you could, theoretically.
But probably we worth more, and I think that it also. I know previously, if you just played a qualifier for the minor or a minor, you would not be able to participate in another team. And I'm not sure if they removed that rule, because that could be.
I think that's been changed. I think you can go from a minor to I don't remember right now, but I think that's been changed.
Sure, yeah, because we had the situation where we couldn't play with Kerba and we had gla1ve.
Yeah, but that was a while ago. I think that's changed in the meantime. That like at least the qualifier into a major, you can play that. I think even from the minor now, but I'm not 100% on that right now.
Boys, I want to. We have about 8 minutes left, right? And we probably, well, we're not probably. I was going to say we're probably never going to have Device again. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he's enjoying his time. But
if you want me,
we're very blessed to have you on the show, mate. Some of the answers you've given this evening are absolutely phenomenal, blown me away. But what I would like to do right now, unless you guys want to talk any more about the CS Summit stuff, we have the show next week. I think we're doing. Do we just want to go to playtime? We don't have to run the fucking bumper. Do we just want to have a chat here with Device about any questions, or see if there's anything that we want to pick his brain about?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay, let's do that. Don't play the bumper. We'll pretend the bumper's played. We won't waste any time with that shit. Striker Prof, off the top of your head, do you have anything, like any direction, any question, anything Counter-Strike related that you want to kick this off with?
There was something that I wanted to ask at the start, but it was just so off topic that it didn't really make sense.
Okay.
Which is just that, obviously, until you change those 2 players, right? You still won the online event.
Yeah.
And in general, I don't think you've really failed online events before. I think you've been just as consistent there as anywhere else. At least not off the top of my head. I don't remember a result where you just got blown out at an online event, and that seems to me like such an outlier. Nobody else is this consistent, like, period. But obviously online it's even more exaggerated. Why do you think that is?
I think we worked a lot on like setting ourselves up for games at online tournaments and treating them as an like a LAN game, right? So what we want to do is we want to create the same preparation. Damn dog. We create the same preparation, and I think that maybe, as you say, like some of the other teams are actually slacking a little bit online. So that's also something you can use in your favor. I think the most important aspect is probably just like respecting your opponent no matter what, preparing for your opponent, and like the underdog teams that are winning these games. I can't guarantee you this, but I know a lot of the teams are not preparing the same way as they would for a quarterfinal or for a semifinal. But you have to do that because these teams are not used to being anti-strategy against. So they don't know how it is to be nade stacked every round. They don't know how it is to be not able to run your normal defaults, or like you have a guy on your team that dies every round because you have information that they don't know. So I think that's key, and into winning against the underdog teams, you really have to be good at abusing that.
Okay.
Dude, I'm looking at your like online past, and it's just so ridiculous. Like dating back, like I'm looking just before DreamHack Masters, right? Like just before you change the players, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the last 9 online events you won.
That's crazy, actually. I didn't even know that.
There's like there's the like one qualifier in there, but like
that
other
must
than that,
be
it's
a
actually
record.
normal. Yeah, it's like ECS season 5. Well, ECS season 5 Europe, ECS season 6 Europe, Pro League season 8 Europe, ECS season 7 Europe week 1, then week 4. Then you had the third place at Pro League season 11, and then the first place at Road to Rio. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 wins.
We had a league, one of the ECS seasons, where we were unbeaten. We had 1 game left, and we played against LDLC, and we lost. And I know that nobody has gone undefeated through an online tournament, or so we really wanted that win, and I still remember that one. That's from 2018. That was a tough loss, even though it was online. So you have to respect the losses and the games in the same way, for sure.
Okay.
This is actually a good question that we can ask following up to that, because there's obviously been a lot of discussion about LAN and online right now. Certain teams put a lot of stock in. How much stock do you now no one's disputing that LAN is not the purest form, right? I think everybody is well aware of that. But how much stock do you put into teams using that as an excuse for them not to perform?
I mean, it's never an excuse. I think that's I wouldn't say ridiculous, but it's just a kind of a slack mentality. You have to have a grind mentality, right? You have to always work your hardest, and having that thought in your head, no matter if it's maybe there just once a day, or maybe if it's there after you've lost every time, like it creates a bad pattern. And I think that you can't really use the excuse. You just have to play with the circumstances you have. And of course, some teams will maybe thrive in the environment, and some teams will maybe have a harder time, but there's nothing you can do about that. Just play the game, and especially after you've lost, like if you don't have any constructive things to say on Twitter, and if it's just, oh, we were just unlucky, it's online, then I mean, like it just in my opinion, it just looks weird from the outside perspective. You have to take responsibility, and especially towards your teammates as well, because otherwise then the whole atmosphere in the team will just be like, we're just playing online, like we could have just had a break, and it's not worth the fatigue that the players are under. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, I like that.
There was a question on Instagram, and it was just framed in a funny way, and it's also a question we kind of have to ask. It was like, when will Xyp9x and gla1ve return? They will return, right? And then 5 dots. So it was very, very, very concerned. So what can you say about that?
gla1ve's return is planned for August. Xyp's return is not planned. That's all I can say. I don't know when in August gla1ve will return, but it's in August, and I don't think we have a certain date on Xyp. It's hard sometimes with these situations, right? Because a date can also put even more stress on the matter. You actually want to handle the situation and then slowly put people into things again. For my own point of view, I kind of got thrown into things again, and it's a issue you have to be really careful with, because you can pressure people too hard again, and you will have an even harder time coming back, right? So August this year, not next year, not anything like that, you know.
August
plan for gla1ve.
2030.
Yeah, exactly. No, August this year. So that's the plan for gla1ve, and Xyp hopefully as soon as possible. My thoughts are with him all the time, man. I wish him the best. He's one of my best friends.
Okay, that's that, boys. I don't know if you're all happy with that. Are we happy to leave it? That's quite a nice note to close the show.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for joining us for HLTV Confirmed. This has been episode number 22. Once again, Device, thank you. That was great.
Thank you so much.
It was fantastic to have you on. Great to pick your brain and great to hear some insights on bits and pieces. Now, if you are just an audio-only listener, well, you know where to find the podcast, but you can head over to anchor.fm/HLTV. I can actually tell you right now, we will be doing another show next Monday, unless Lucas decides he doesn't want to. I think we discussed that we're going to do a show next Monday and then the Monday following when the player break starts. And then after that, we might take a little bit of time off because there's probably not too much Counter-Strike news. So that's just for all the viewers out there. We'll try and work on some guests, discussion about potentially doing another game changer episode. Yeah, that's been the show. We've covered a lot of topics here today. Thank you for tuning on in. And I don't have any fun life advice to leave with you guys this time around. Just be kind to yourself. I think that's where we'll leave it. So good night.